radio, television, and the content we consume have changed enormously since I was a kid. This is a podcast about the physics and the metaphor of this change and how we can change too, but only if we want to remain resonant. Hey, it's Andrew, and this is Safety on Tap. Since you're listening in, you must be a leader wanting to grow yourself and drastically improve health and safety along the way. Welcome to you. You're in the right place. If this is your first time listening in, thanks for joining us, and well done for trying something different to improve. And of course, welcome back to all of you wonderful regular listeners. There used to be just a handful of TV stations and a handful of radio stations. It was kind of easy as a kid because the TV guide fit onto a single page in the newspaper, and the discussion about what to watch was easier because there were only a few options to choose from. Cartoons on Channel 7 on the afternoons that we were allowed to watch TV, then Channel 2 at 6 p.m. for the ABC News. On Wednesdays, the highlight of the week was a bit of police drama with Blue Heelers on Channel 7 at 8. And Friday Night Football on Channel 9 kicked off the sporting entertainment for the weekend. Bandwidth used to be a constraint. On the radiomagnetic spectrum, there are only a limited number of frequencies which TV or radio could use to broadcast their content to you. Even if you have a digital radio in your car or at home, you can still see the remnants of this bandwidth constraint when a radio station includes the number in its name. Mix 106.5, 104.1, Today FM. The number is the actual frequency measured in megahertz FM stations, the actual number of times that the wave goes up and down per second on its way from the transmitter to you. That number meant that it was easy for you to tune into the right station, to listen to what they had to offer, loud and clear. If you were 1 point off, one tweak of the dial, not only did you have the wrong frequency, you had garbled or snowy or no radio content to listen to. There is no doubt that the use of the radiomagnetic spectrum for communication and its associated constraint of having a limited number of frequencies shaped our culture enormously. Until the constraint disappeared. With the internet, we went from limited bandwidth to broadband because we jumped off the radiomagnetic spectrum and entered a world of limitless channels to choose from. Unlimited space for broadcast, and people who are more than happy to no longer be constrained to the 3 or 5 channels they used to have to choose from. Along with this change came an entirely new approach to the transmitter and the receiver. The antenna on your radio or the roof of your house was designed to pick up these limited frequencies, and the huge towers in the big cities transmitted their content to match the frequencies your antenna could receive. Which brings us to the importance of the word understand. If you had a lot of radio static or a fuzzy picture on the TV, it's not as if the device had an understanding problem. It had a frequency problem, a tuning problem. You, in turn, had the understanding problem. It's pretty common to hear health and safety professionals talk about understanding or lack of it, usually in reference to the very important stakeholders that we're actually seeking to serve. They don't get it, which means they don't understand. If only they understood. The incident has finally gotten them to understand. The training's going to help them understand. The client doesn't understand. The regulator regulates with a strange kind of hope that understanding will magically appear from punishment. Those workers just don't understand. Notice how it sounds a lot like we're making the understanding problem their problem? A lack of understanding or misunderstanding is a strong undercurrent of the kind of work that people like us do. Resonance is a concept we can learn from, which lives at the heart of electromagnetic physics. If you studied music, you may have come across a tuning fork, a very hard two-pronged piece of metal, which, when you strike the pronged end, creates a single note at a specific frequency. The weight and the dimensions of the tuning fork permanently fix the frequency of that note in the object, which is great when you have something like a guitar, since the strings, even on the best, most well-tuned guitars, gradually start to get out of tune soon after you tune it. A tuning fork is a point of reference. You hit the end of it on the heel of your hand or the side of your leg, and you place the end of the humming tuning fork on the body of your guitar, and it will sound the note that you need to tune the first string, which enables you to tune all the other strings off that point of reference. What's cool about tuning forks is that you have two of the same frequency, and you put them close to each other and strike one of them to get it vibrating. It will induce the tuning fork placed right next to it to start vibrating even though you haven't touched it, because they are the same frequency. They are resonant with each other. The beauty of resonance in a pitch perfect note is matched by the power of resonance in large engineered structures. Nature is full of frequencies, not just electromagnetic, but in weather cycles and waves in the ocean and when the wind blows, as well as our heartbeat. One of the most impressive examples of resonance that I've seen is on the Tacoma Suspension Bridge. Bridges are designed to move and to account for that movement that happens in the earth and its footings and the load that it carries and the forces that it has to withstand, including the wind. This video shows the bridge responding to the wind, which causes it to vibrate and then twist and sway.
Only a 35-mile-an-hour wind is blowing, but this apparently sets up a rhythmic swinging of the bridge, which increases with each swing. Finally, the swinging road and the suspension cables give way and plunge into the water below.
The vibrations seen in this up and down wavering of the bridge start to amplify, and it actually looks like a wave rolling from side to side and end to end until ultimately it collapses under the force of the vibrations that it was never built to withstand. I've included a link, if you're listening to this on the podcast, to the video of this so you can see for yourself the power of nature over man-made things. But what this failure shows us is the power of resonance. When one force and a receiver are tuned into each other, what is being transmitted becomes resonant with some impressively powerful effects. So back to radio or TV. How did you tune into the right channel? Well, you needed a few things. When cable TV arrived, the customer's existing antenna wasn't even capable of receiving the number of channels that started to become available. Instead, the television companies realized that they needed to use new technology in order to help you receive what they had to offer, to open up the channels that you were able to access, to help you tune in better. So you need a transmitter and a receiver that are on the same band of wavelengths. What happens with traditional radio or TV is when the transmitting and receiving antenna are matched by frequency, the power of the transmitted signal, which is pretty powerful, creates resonance in the receiving antenna, effectively moving the signals across the air and recreating them in your radio or TV. Have you ever said these kinds of things before, these kinds of words, or maybe heard them from other people when we're talking about things other than TV or radio? Are we on the same wavelength? You know what? They totally tuned out of what I was saying. That person or that idea or that concept, that really resonates with me. When it comes to the change that we seek to make, we aren't talking about electromagnetic physics or the internet. But the physics not only gives us the language that we already use in day-to-day talk, but the whole metaphor can help us get better at what we do. Hey, it's Andrew with a quick reflection about performance. No one wakes up in the morning thinking, I wish I had a coach for work. So it's pretty normal that coaching isn't a concept that's on your mind. What I do know is from working with hundreds of health and safety professionals, what's more likely to be in your mind are the frustrations you might be feeling about making change, or the doubts you have about your ability to step up, or concerns you have about the capability of your team to better service the needs of your organization. Or maybe you're excited but unsure about your new promotion, that expanded responsibility, or how in the heck you'll develop and deliver that new health and safety strategy. These are the everyday things in the game of health and safety practice. Some good, some not so good. A coach is not on the field of play with you. They don't pass you the ball and tell you what to do. A coach helps you be ready for the game, to prepare a plan, to develop the skills or the capabilities for the next challenge, and support you through the losses as well as the wins. Coaching is not evaluated on your participation or the time spent. Coaching is only evaluated on its outcomes for you, and they can be pretty awesome. Coaching is one of the most effective forms of professional development I've ever seen. I have a long list of stories and people who I can put you in touch with to tell you exactly how they've benefited from coaching with me. And it's a pretty smart investment in valuable resources for you and your team. If you want to explore how coaching might help accelerate you and your team's success, visit www.safetyontap.com/curious. So let's connect the metaphor with our day-to-day work. I'll give you a start with some examples to get your reflective juices flowing. The first is frequency, the difference between choosing to transmit at a frequency of ours choosing or match the frequency of what people can receive. The whole thing only works when the wavelengths you are on are matched. You will experience frustrating results and unhappy internal customers and miscommunications when there is a mismatch. When are our stakeholders able to receive the frequency we are transmitting? Are they receiving during meetings or during bids or tenders or at certain times of the year or during planning at someone's desk or in the drive, in the car with someone between sites? Or maybe there are multiple opportunities for them to receive throughout day-to-day operations. When, in turn, do your messages get ignored? When do your messages seem to get through? The tricky bit here is that the frequency that people are able to receive at will change depending on where they're at and what they're doing. So it's useful to pay attention to when the message is getting through and when it's not. It's very unlikely that they have a listening problem. It's far more likely that you have a frequency problem. Next, we have channels. In the time since my childhood TV days, I still enjoy a well-made cop show in the tradition of Blue Heelers. Sport, I watch almost no sport on TV these days. And when I do, it's almost always field hockey of all sports, broadcasting the state Premier League games, often on social media, or the national hockey competition that almost no one has heard of in Australia called Hockey One, or the random international test matches, which might be on KO at one time, or 7 Sport the next, or maybe YouTube Live another time. All different channels. The content changes and the channel changes too. The channels can be as different as a book on cat hair knitting, which exists, to an entirely new ASMR category made up wholly and solely of crisp and amplified everyday sounds like sharpening a pencil or chewing potato chips. Alcoholics Anonymous have never, ever had traditional media channels, but they have a million channels. Play in rooms, in church or community halls, with a circle of chairs set up every Thursday evening. That's their channel. So instead of the channel being defined by the limited frequencies available or that you choose, there's an infinite number of channels based on the content that you are transmitting. Health and safety stuff is often stuck in limited channel thinking. The ways we communicate can be counted on like one hand, maybe two. Alerts via email, PowerPoints with reports, risk assessments in a table format in a Word doc, or if you object to that generalization, risk assessments in table format in the expensive database program that you use to basically replicate what you used to do in Word docs. Classroom training for inductions and training. Maybe a little or a lot of e-learning, which isn't really a channel itself, but a collection of channels combining online behind a computer with words and pictures and maybe video. They're like sub-channels. We quickly finish this list of channels that we use in health and safety. When the message doesn't get through, remember how the cable companies, they didn't criticize the consumer for their old antenna. They gave them new ways of receiving the transmission. I guarantee you that there are already examples of creative and innovative ways that your people are using multiple channels in ways you have never seen. project teams on WhatsApp or whiteboards, physical whiteboards in a room, or Slack, the app. MS Team Spaces. The best English-speaking person on the crew, who is the translator for the rest, is a channel. The Friday afternoon drinks gathering, the bonnet or the hood of the workute, scribbling plans for the site and for the day. All channels where effective communication is happening. So now you might have realized that you've actually got two problems. The first is the number of channels is infinite, which seems kind of scary. The second problem stems from the first, which is figuring out which channels you can earn permission to use or create yourself and see whether your transmission gets through. And finally, resonance. When your frequency and the receivers are in tune, when you're on the same channel, your ability to be resonant is enormous. Like it or not, incidents change what people tune into, which amplifies your ability to be resonant with the people who can make change. It also might create problems, which could be the same old message on the same old frequency, responding to bad stuff, ignoring the otherwise successful work and all its adaptations, looking for blame, ignoring the factors in the system of work, which amplified towards the destructive forces that led people to make decisions that made sense to them at the time. So what resonates? What frequency are you on? Can be a bit of a double-edged sword. You know, when you have said something or you've done something, presented something that has resonated, you know because there's an obvious, detectable shift from the receiver getting nothing to the receiver being tuned in to you and responding favorably. You know when they all of a sudden start picking up what you're putting down. The thing about resonance for us versus the basic physics of sound is that the tuning is matched, but the message might change. A single note on a tuning fork will only ever be that. But a radio and a television producer, they realized that once people were tuned into their channel, what they did or didn't say or do on that channel, that was up to them. Which brings us to this infinite channel problem. Remember that these are now defined, channels, I should say, are now defined not by the transmission frequency, but by the content on the channel. That's where you have the opportunity to test what might be resonant with the people that you seek to serve. If you transmit the same old stuff in the same old ways, don't be surprised if they tune out. If you transmit new ideas, concepts, theories, or ways of looking at the world, new data or stories or metaphors, pay attention to what and for whom the message resonates and double down there. And remember, it's not all up to you, so stop trying to be an old media company where you only needed 1/3 of the entire market share. When there were 3 TV stations and 5 radio stations, they invested heavily and took great responsibility for what they chose to transmit, even though it wasn't always great. Now, everyone is their own media company. If you have a smartphone and an internet connection, and inside an organization, you don't even need these to be a cultural influencer, to be a transmitter who can create resonance. You're no longer the sole transmitter in your organization, so stop acting like it. Look for resonance, amplify that, and they in turn become transmitters through all sorts of new channels to reach people who you would never have been able. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, what's the one thing you'll do to create positive, effective, or rewarding action to grow yourself and drastically improve health and safety along the way? See ya.